It's strange how a single moment can change everything. How in a split second, the course of your life can shift without you even realizing it. This was my moment. It started with a simple, unassuming text from my wife. And no, I didn't know then how it would spiral into something I could never have imagined, something I wouldn't understand until much later. I was sitting at my desk, the same desk I'd sat at for years, in the small office I've worked in for as long as I could remember. My name's Oliver. I'm the kind of guy who prefers routine, the steady, predictable things that don't give you much trouble. My life with Sophie, my wife, had been stable, and that's exactly how I liked it. Stable, secure, uneventful. We didn't do anything flashy. We weren't the type of couple to post everything on social media or go on spontaneous trips around the world. We just lived. We worked, we ate dinner together, we watched movies on weekends, and we went to bed at the same time every night. And yet, on this ordinary Wednesday evening, something happened that would shatter all of that. It was just before 7 p.m. when I saw it. A text from Sophie. Nothing out of the ordinary. She'd left the office earlier than usual that day, and we'd made plans to have a quiet dinner together. But as I opened the message, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Hey, I'm going to be late tonight. Don't wait up. Now, there were a couple of things wrong with this. First of all, Sophie never worked late. Never. She was a manager at a marketing firm, but she had always been the first to leave the office. She hated being there after hours. So for her to tell me she was staying late, well, that in itself seemed off. And then there was the second thing that bothered me, the phrase "don't wait up." Sophie never said that. When she stayed late, she'd always say something like, "I'll be home soon," or "I'll grab something on the way home." But "don't wait up"? It didn't feel like her at all. I stared at the message for a long time, trying to figure out if I was just overreacting. Maybe I was. It could have been nothing. Maybe she just had a lot of work to catch up on, right? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that something didn't sit right with me. I waited for a moment, thinking I'd get a follow-up text with an explanation or at least a bit more detail. But nothing came, and that's when my curiosity got the better of me. I sent a message back, jokingly, trying to lighten the mood. Already had dinner, with the office copier. "I think we're getting serious," I typed, hoping to get a laugh from her. Sophie always appreciated my dry humor, even when it was a bit ridiculous. But this time, my phone stayed quiet. No immediate reply. No laughing emojis. Nothing. I should have just gone to bed, let it go, and waited for her to get home. But something inside me nagged. I needed to know. Why was she acting like this? Why was she staying late again? It had only been a couple of weeks since she had started these longer shifts, but the frequency was starting to worry me. So, I did something I didn't think I would do. I decided to check her location on my phone. We had the same apps, the same account, and she had shared her location with me months ago, saying, "You never know when you'll need it." At first, I thought it was a sweet gesture, a way to stay connected even when life got busy. But tonight, it felt more like an intrusion. I opened the app and typed in her name. For a brief second, I wondered if this was a mistake, if it was an invasion of her privacy. But curiosity won out. The screen loaded, and there it was, her location. She wasn't at the office. I squinted at the map, my heart starting to beat faster. The pin showed that she was at a cafe, not far from the office, but not exactly there either. I wasn't sure if I was relieved or more confused. Why was she at a cafe? She had told me she was staying late at work. Could she be meeting someone? That's when I saw it. There was a name in the recent places visited section. A name I didn't recognize. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. It was probably just someone from work, a colleague, or a client. But the seed of doubt had already been planted. Without thinking, I clicked on the name. It was a business contact. Liam Donovan. The name meant nothing to me at first, but as I looked at the address listed next to it, I recognized it. It was a building in the business district, the place where Sophie had gone for lunch meetings before. But something felt off. The knot in my stomach tightened, and before I knew it, I found myself typing a message to Sophie. "Where exactly are you right now?" I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. The reply came almost instantly. "I'm still at the cafe. I'll be home soon. Don't worry." Her response seemed casual, but the words felt too rehearsed. But there was no way I could have known then just how much deeper this rabbit hole was going to go. The hours stretched on after I sent that last message, and with each passing minute, I found myself sinking deeper into an unsettling abyss of doubt. The idea that something wasn't right kept clawing at my mind. Sophie's sudden change in behavior, the strange text, her cryptic responses, it was all starting to add up in a way I wasn't prepared for. I thought about calling her, but the rational part of my brain told me to stop. I didn't want to be the overbearing husband. I didn't want to seem paranoid. So I sat there, in the dim light of our apartment, waiting for her to come home, hoping that whatever was happening would just be something I could laugh off in the morning. But deep down, I knew that wouldn't happen. I knew this wasn't something I could just ignore. The clock on the wall ticked louder with every passing minute, the silence in the apartment weighing down on me. I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't even read. My mind was racing, spinning in circles around the thought of Sophie being at that cafe. It was such a small thing, but it had unsettled me in a way I couldn't explain. Why would she lie about being at the office? And what was with that name? Liam Donovan. I couldn't shake it. It felt too deliberate, too pointed. Was she meeting him? Was it something innocent? Or was it something more? It was then that my phone buzzed again, shaking me out of my thoughts. The message was from Sophie. I nearly jumped out of my skin as I quickly unlocked my phone, only to feel the sudden rush of disappointment when I read her words. I'll be home soon. Just finishing up. See you in a bit. That was all. No mention of the cafe. No mention of Liam. Just the same line she had sent earlier. I sighed deeply, placing my phone back on the table. Part of me wanted to believe her. I really did. But I couldn't. Something felt off. And as much as I hated to admit it, the more I tried to push the thoughts away, the more they came back to haunt me. I stood up, walking aimlessly around the apartment, as if pacing could somehow ease the tension building inside me. My eyes landed on the clock again. It was nearing 9 p.m. now. I had hoped she'd be home by then. Hell, I thought she might even text me to let me know she was on her way. But there was nothing. I went to the window and looked out onto the street below, the city lights flickering in the distance. It was one of those nights where the world outside seemed so far away, and the weight of everything happening inside my own head felt suffocating. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't even sure what I was feeling. But I knew I was on the verge of something that would change everything. Then it happened. The door clicked open, and Sophie stepped inside. I turned my head toward her, expecting to see that tired but familiar smile she always had when she came home. Instead, she walked in, her face pale and her eyes darting nervously around the room. She didn't even notice me standing there at first. She dropped her keys on the counter and hung her coat with a hurried motion. I watched her for a moment, a sense of dread creeping up on me. Something was wrong. She finally looked up, catching my gaze, but she didn't smile. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there in the hallway, her shoulders tense. It was like she was trying to figure out how to act. I felt my pulse quicken. I didn't know what to do, what to say. It was like she was hiding something, and that made the silence between us all the more unbearable. I forced myself to break the tension. "Hey," I said, my voice sounding far too calm for how I felt inside. "Long day." She nodded but didn't say anything. "Do you want to talk about it?" I asked, almost instinctively. Maybe it was the right thing to do. Maybe if I just let her speak, she'd open up. Her eyes flickered nervously, and she shook her head. "I'm fine. Just tired." She paused, then added, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to worry you." I stood there, not sure how to respond. Something about the way she said those words didn't sit right with me. The apology sounded rehearsed. The words didn't feel genuine. She wasn't acting like the woman I'd been married to for the last 5 years. I nodded, trying to mask the anxiety bubbling up inside me. "Okay," I said, even though I didn't feel okay. I couldn't let it go. I needed to know what was going on, but I didn't know how to ask without sounding accusatory. So I did what any reasonable person would do in my situation. I decided to wait. But waiting didn't make it easier. She grabbed a glass of water from the kitchen and then sat down on the couch. I joined her, trying to act normal, trying to pretend everything was fine, but the questions kept coming back. Why had she lied about the office? Why the sudden late hours? Why hadn't she mentioned Liam? I tried to focus on her, to engage in a conversation, but all I could think about was the sinking feeling in my gut. And then it happened. The slip-up. Sophie's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She jumped slightly, and I caught the briefest glimpse of her face, the kind of expression you make when you're caught off guard. She quickly reached for the phone, almost too quickly, and checked the screen. I was about to look away, to pretend I hadn't noticed, but then I saw her reaction. Her face went pale, her lips trembling slightly as she read the message. Her eyes widened, and for just a second, she froze. Who was that? I asked, before I could stop myself. Sophie quickly locked the screen, but not before I saw the name. Liam Donovan. My stomach twisted. She looked at me, her face a mask of nervousness. It's nothing. Just a work thing, she stammered. But I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't being honest. Something was wrong. Something much deeper than I was prepared for. I felt the urge to confront her then and there, to demand answers. But a part of me held back. I couldn't explain it, but I knew that if I pushed her now, I might never get the full truth. So I stayed silent, and for the first time, I wasn't sure what to believe. The silence between us grew thicker with each passing minute. Sophie sat across from me, her phone still clutched in her hand, her fingers nervously tapping the screen. She was trying to act like everything was fine, but I could see right through her. Her usual confidence had evaporated, replaced with this anxious energy I had never seen before. My mind raced, my thoughts spiraling in every direction. Who was Liam Donovan, and why had she reacted so nervously when his name appeared on her phone? She hadn't even tried to hide it well. Her eyes had betrayed her. I knew I couldn't let this go. As much as I wanted to believe her, as much as I wanted to trust her, my gut told me something was off. That feeling, the one that's hard to shake, the one that gnaws at you from the inside, had settled deep in my stomach. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I tried to keep my voice steady as I spoke. Sophie, who is Liam Donovan? I asked, my words coming out slower than I intended. I could see the way her shoulders tensed, the way her eyes flickered to the phone in her hand, but she didn't respond right away. She just stared at me, her lips pressed tightly together, as if she were deciding whether or not to tell me the truth. She swallowed hard, finally putting the phone down on the coffee table. He's just a colleague, she said. But there was something about the way she said it, so matter-of-fact, so rehearsed, that made me even more suspicious. Just a colleague? That didn't explain the way she'd reacted to his name. It didn't explain the way she'd acted all evening. I leaned forward, my heart pounding in my chest. You've been acting strange lately, I said quietly, carefully. You've been staying late at work more than usual, and now this. Is there something going on, Sophie? Because I need to know. Her eyes softened for just a moment, but only for a moment. Then they hardened again, as if she was preparing to shut me out completely. You're just overthinking things, she said, her voice calm, almost too calm. I told you it's nothing. Liam and I work together. That's all. But something in her voice made me doubt her words. I could tell she was trying to convince me, not just with her words, but with her body language too. She was closing herself off from me, her posture stiffening, her arms crossing protectively in front of her chest. I wasn't ready to let it go. Not yet. Sophie, I said, my voice dropping lower. I don't believe you. The words hung in the air, and for a second, I thought I saw something in her eyes, something like fear or maybe guilt. It was brief, just a flicker, but it was enough to make my pulse quicken. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't mean for this to happen. I wasn't sure what she meant by that. What didn't she mean to happen? What was she apologizing for? My mind raced, but I couldn't figure it out. I wanted to ask her more, to push her for answers, but I held back. I had to be careful. If I pushed too hard, she might shut down completely, and I'd never get the truth. But if I let it slide, I'd never be able to shake the feeling that something was wrong. It felt like I was walking a fine line. I could see it in her eyes, this strange mix of guilt and avoidance. And for the first time, I realized something. Sophie was hiding something. And whatever it was bigger than I could ever have imagined. As I sat there, trying to make sense of it all, the phone buzzed again. Sophie's hand jerked instinctively toward it. But this time, I was watching her more closely. I saw the way she hesitated before picking it up, the way her face went momentarily pale. For a split second, I thought she was going to shut the phone off completely. But instead, she read the message in silence, her lips pressing tighter together. I couldn't hold back anymore. I had to know. What is it? I asked, my voice firm this time. Who's it from? Sophie looked at me for a moment, her eyes unreadable, and then she slowly turned the phone around, showing me the screen. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the name. Liam Donovan. Again. But this time, it wasn't just a message. It was a series of texts. I leaned in, unable to help myself, my eyes scanning the screen. The first text read, I'll be waiting for you at the usual place. Don't make me wait long this time. My blood ran cold. The usual place? Sophie hadn't mentioned any usual place before. What was going on? The second text read, "I've been thinking about you all day. Can't wait to see you tonight." And that's when everything clicked. The way Sophie had been acting, the secrecy, the strange texts, the way she had reacted to me even asking about him. It all pointed to the same thing. She was having an affair. I felt my hands shake as I processed the information. How could she do this? How could she lie to me so easily? I had trusted her. I had given her everything. And this was how she repaid me? But as the realization sank in, something else happened. I wasn't angry. Not yet. What I felt wasn't rage. It was hurt. Deep, bone-chilling hurt. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about everything I thought I knew about my wife, my life, falling apart in front of me. I wanted to scream, to shout, to demand answers, but I couldn't. Instead, I just sat there, frozen, staring at the phone screen, as the weight of the truth crashed down on me. Sophie finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Please, don't look at me like that." But it was too late. The truth was already out, and nothing would ever be the same again. The air between us had grown thick, heavy with tension. I could barely breathe as I stared at Sophie. The words from the phone were still echoing in my mind, the messages flashing behind my eyelids like a grotesque slideshow. "I'll be waiting for you at the usual place. Don't make me wait long this time." The usual place. What the hell did that even mean? And that second message, the one that said, "I've been thinking about you all day. Can't wait to see you tonight." It wasn't just flirtation. It was intimate, personal, as if they were already planning the next step of whatever secret relationship they were having. I could feel my hands trembling. Every part of my body wanted to act, to shout, to demand answers. But part of me was still paralyzed, like I couldn't fully accept what was unfolding in front of me. I had always been the type of person who kept calm under pressure. But this was different. I turned the phone over slowly, as if I was afraid the screen might burn me. Sophie's gaze was fixed on it, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But that didn't stop the waves of betrayal crashing through my chest. I had trusted her. We had built a life together, and now it was all crumbling, piece by piece, in front of me. Sophie's voice cracked as she spoke again. "Please, Oliver. I didn't mean for you to find out this way." I didn't know how to respond to that. There was no justification in her voice, no apology. It was just fear. It was the fear of being caught. And that made me even angrier. "What is this, Sophie?" I finally managed to ask, my voice low and shaking. "What the hell is going on with you and him?" I couldn't look at her anymore. The betrayal was too much to bear, and my chest tightened as I turned away, pacing the small living room. The walls felt like they were closing in around me. She didn't answer right away, and in that silence, the reality of the situation hit me harder than I expected. Sophie wasn't just late to work or meeting a colleague. This was something deeper, something that had been going on behind my back for a long time. She had kept it from me. Liam Donovan. I still couldn't get over the fact that she hadn't just mentioned him. I should have known. I should have noticed. When I looked back at her, her face was flushed, her hands wringing in her lap. She was avoiding my gaze, her eyes darting between the floor and the phone on the table. The guilt was evident. But there was something else, too. There was a shadow of something more sinister lurking in her expression, something I couldn't quite place. I didn't want to hurt you, Oliver. You have to understand that," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It just happened. I didn't plan for it. I didn't mean for any of this." My heart ached. That was it, wasn't it? This wasn't some innocent mistake. This was something she'd been hiding, something she'd been doing for longer than I'd ever known. Just happened. I repeated bitterly, the words tasting like venom in my mouth. "You've been lying to me. You've been sneaking around behind my back. And you think it just happened?" Sophie flinched, as if my words had struck her physically. She shook her head, tears beginning to well up in her eyes. But I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. Not now. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to tell you the truth without losing you." The room felt suffocating, the walls pressing in as I stood there, trying to process everything. I wanted answers. I wanted to understand how this could happen, how she could betray me like this. But instead of the clarity I expected, my mind felt clouded, filled with more questions than answers. "How long, Sophie?" I asked quietly, almost too afraid to hear the answer. My throat felt tight. "How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, And in that brief moment of silence, I could feel the weight of her secret pressing down on us both. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "A few months," she said. "Maybe longer." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. A few months? How could I not have known? How could I have been so blind? I tried to breathe, but it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My legs felt weak beneath me, and for a second, I thought I might collapse. She stood up then, slowly, carefully, as though she was afraid of what I might do. She took a tentative step toward me, her eyes wide with desperation. "Please, Oliver," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted this to happen." But I was beyond the point of understanding. I was beyond the point of trying to save whatever we had left. There was no going back from this. The trust had been shattered beyond repair. "Don't," I said, holding my hand up to stop her. "Just don't. I don't want to hear it." Sophie froze, her eyes welling up with tears, but I couldn't comfort her. I couldn't do anything to make this better. I felt like a stranger in my own home, in my own life. This wasn't the woman I had married. She wasn't the person I thought I knew. I turned away from her, walking towards the door. The cold night air hit me like a slap to the face as I stepped outside. I needed space. I needed air. I needed to get away from this house, from her, from the lies. But as I stepped out into the night, one thought repeated itself in my mind. How long had she been lying to me? And how much more was I going to uncover? And the worst part? I still didn't know if I was ready to face the truth. I stood outside for what felt like hours, even though it was barely a few minutes. The cold air sliced through me, and my breath fogged up in front of me, a visual representation of the mess my thoughts had become. I kept replaying the conversation in my mind, Sophie's apology, the way she had tried to explain herself. "I didn't mean for this to happen," line kept ringing in my ears, but the truth of it felt too hollow. The damage had been done. There was no way to undo what had happened, no way to go back to how things were before. I had trusted her. I had given her that trust freely. And now, it was shattered. The question wasn't how or why she had done this. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I could still hear her voice, pleading with me to understand, but I didn't know if I could forgive her. I didn't know if I even wanted to. There was a darkness in the pit of my stomach that I couldn't shake, the gnawing, burning sensation that told me I was only scratching the surface of something far worse. She had been lying to me, and that was the hardest thing to come to terms with. The betrayal stung more than anything she could have said or done. It was the deceit, the calculated way she had kept me in the dark while building a life of her own with someone else. The night felt like it was stretching on forever, and yet, every minute was like 100 years. I could hear the faint sounds of cars passing by in the distance, but they felt muffled, like I was living in a bubble that I couldn't escape. Sophie's presence in the house was still weighing on me, a constant reminder of everything I had lost and everything that was still left unsaid. I didn't know how long I stood there, just breathing and thinking, but eventually, I knew I had to go back inside. I didn't want to. Part of me wanted to just walk away, leave everything behind. But that wasn't me. That wasn't who I was. I wasn't the type to run from problems. I had always dealt with things head-on, even when it hurt. But now, facing her, knowing what I knew, felt like a trap. What was I supposed to do now? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever came next, and pushed open the door. Sophie was sitting on the couch when I returned, still in the same spot where I had left her. She hadn't moved, and the tension in the room had only grown thicker since I'd stepped outside. She didn't look up at first, as if she were afraid to face me again. The only sound in the room was the soft ticking of the clock on the wall, each tick a reminder of the time lost, the time wasted. "Sophie," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, considering the storm raging inside me. "We need to talk." She looked up at me then, her eyes red from crying, her face a mixture of guilt and fear. She nodded slowly but didn't speak. I could see she was waiting for me to say something, waiting for me to make the next move. And that was what hurt the most. She was waiting for me, but all I felt was an emptiness where our trust used to be. "I've been thinking," I continued, my words deliberate, as if I had planned them in my mind over the last few minutes. "I don't know how to go forward from here. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel, or what I'm supposed to do with this with us." Sophie's eyes searched my face, as though trying to read me, trying to figure out where I stood. But I was as much a stranger to myself in that moment as I was to her. I didn't know if I wanted to fix things. I didn't know if I could. I never wanted to hurt you, Oliver, she said softly, but the words felt empty. I swear, I never meant for it to get this far. The irony of it stung. Of course, she didn't mean for it to get this far. But here we were. I walked closer to her, my mind clouded with frustration. But it did get this far, Sophie. And now, I don't know what to do with that. I don't know if I can trust you again. Her face crumpled at my words, and she started crying in earnest, her sobs shaking her entire body. Seeing her cry should have made me feel something. Sympathy, maybe. But all I felt was numbness. A numbness that made me cold inside. I had loved her. I had trusted her. And now I didn't even recognize her anymore. I'm sorry, she gasped between sobs, her hands trembling as she wiped her face. I never wanted to betray you. I never meant for any of this to happen. I thought I could keep it from you, but I couldn't. I couldn't keep lying. I stared at her, my emotions a swirling mess of confusion, anger, and hurt. So what now, Sophie? I asked, my voice almost a whisper, as if I was afraid to hear the answer. What do we do now? Can you fix this? Can you make this go away? Because I don't know if I can just forget this, just pretend it didn't happen. She shook her head, her sobs growing more frantic. I don't know, Oliver. I don't know if I can fix it. I don't know if I deserve to fix it. Her words were like a knife twisting in my gut. She didn't even think she deserved forgiveness. And maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't know her that. Maybe I owed myself the space to heal. But as much as I hated to admit it, there was still a part of me that loved her. There was still a part of me that wasn't ready to let go. I don't know if I can keep going like this, I said quietly, almost to myself. I couldn't help it. I needed to say it. I don't know if I can keep pretending like everything's okay when it's not. Sophie's face paled at my words. She reached out to me, but I stepped back, unable to let her touch me. Not now. Not when everything felt like it was falling apart. Oliver, please, she whispered. I'll do whatever it takes. Just tell me what you need. But I didn't know what I needed. And that was the scariest part of all. I stood there for a moment, not knowing what to do, how to move forward. The future felt uncertain, like I was standing on the edge of a cliff with nothing but darkness below me. I couldn't see where we were headed anymore, and I didn't know if I wanted to. Maybe I need space, I said finally, my voice barely audible. Maybe I need time to think. And with that, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving everything between us hanging in the balance, uncertain and broken. The days that followed felt like I was moving through a fog. I couldn't remember the last time I had felt so disoriented, so utterly lost. It had been a week since I had walked out of that room, a week since I had left Sophie crying on the couch, begging me to come back, begging me to give her a chance to fix it. But I didn't know how to fix it, how to fix us. The more I thought about it, the more I realized there was nothing to fix. The foundation of everything I thought I knew about her, about our life together, had been shattered, and no amount of pleading, no amount of apologies, was going to put the pieces back together. I had moved into the guest room, though I wasn't sure what that even meant anymore. Sleeping in that bed, in that room, felt wrong. The apartment was too quiet now, the silence too deafening. It was strange how something as simple as the absence of noise could make the world feel so hollow. Sophie didn't come near me. She respected the distance I had put between us, but I could tell that it was killing her. She would leave small notes around the apartment, on the bathroom mirror, on the kitchen counter, apologizing, telling me she was sorry, telling me she loved me. But those notes didn't fix anything. They didn't erase the fact that she had lied to me, that she had kept a part of her life hidden from me for months, maybe longer. And the worst part? I couldn't even look at those notes without feeling this visceral, gut-wrenching pain. The love I had for her was still there, but it felt tainted, like a faded memory that I couldn't quite grasp. One night, as I sat alone in the guest room, I found myself scrolling through my phone, the light from the screen casting a cold glow in the otherwise dark room. My mind was still reeling from everything that had happened, the lies, the betrayal, but something in me refused to let go. I found myself opening the messages from Sophie, the one she had sent that night. There it was again, the name I couldn't shake, Liam Donovan. I stared at the messages, my finger hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to erase them, to forget about him, to let the entire situation go. But I couldn't. I had to know. I opened the message thread and began scrolling through their conversations. They were casual at first, friendly banter, but as I kept reading, it started to become clear that there was something more than just casual flirting going on. The messages were laced with intimacy, with a connection that Sophie had never shown me in years. You looked amazing today, as always. Can't stop thinking about you. I can't wait until tonight. Just us. Are you sure you want to keep this secret from him? I don't want to hide anymore. The last message hit me like a ton of bricks. I don't want to hide anymore. She had said it. Sophie had said it. And in that moment, I understood something about her that I didn't want to accept. This affair had been real. It wasn't some fleeting mistake or a one-time slip-up. This had been ongoing. And all the while, I had been completely blind to it. I set the phone down, my hands trembling. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. I didn't know whether to cry, to scream, or to just disappear. I felt completely empty inside, as if the weight of the truth had crushed the life out of me. But I couldn't let it go. I needed more answers. I needed to know everything. The next day, I did something I had never thought I would do. I called Liam. His number was still saved in Sophie's phone. I had debated whether or not to make the call, unsure if it would make things worse or bring some kind of closure. But I didn't care anymore. I was done playing the fool. I needed to hear it from him. When the phone rang, it felt like an eternity before he picked up. The sound of his voice made my blood boil, but I tried to keep my tone steady. Liam Donovan? I asked, my voice calm, almost too calm. Yeah, this is Liam. Who's this? His voice was casual, far too casual for someone who had been secretly seeing my wife. I paused for a moment, gathering my thoughts. This is Oliver, Sophie's husband. I could hear the sudden tension in his voice as he processed my words. Wait, hold on a second, he said quickly, and I could hear him muttering something in the background, probably trying to figure out how to cover up his tracks. But I didn't give him the chance to get comfortable. I know about you and Sophie, I said, my voice cold, biting with every word. I know everything. I just want to hear it from you. Was it worth it? There was a long pause on the other end. And then, finally, he spoke. Look, man, I didn't plan for this to happen. It just did. Sophie and we have something real. I can't help how I feel. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I kept my composure. So, you knew she was married? You knew what you were doing? Yeah, he said, his voice thick with guilt. But she told me she was unhappy. She said things weren't working with you anymore. She said you two were just going through the motions. I didn't think it was my place to question it. She's a grown woman. I didn't want to be the bad guy. I could hear the cowardice in his voice, and it made my blood boil even more. He wasn't the victim here. He wasn't the one who had been lied to. He was just as complicit in this mess as Sophie was. I exhaled deeply, trying to steady myself. You've ruined everything. You've taken something that was mine. And now, I have to figure out how to put the pieces back together. He didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I hung up the phone and stared at it for a long time, the weight of what I had just learned crashing down on me. Sophie hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She had lied. She had conned me into believing everything was okay, while she was off building a life with someone else. And that wasn't something I could just forgive. The truth was right in front of me, undeniable. And now, I had to decide. Was there even a possibility of moving forward from this? Could I ever look at her the same way again? Could we ever fix this? I didn't know the answers. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't the same person I was before. And neither was she. The days after my conversation with Liam felt like I was living in a dream, except it was the kind of nightmare you couldn't wake up from. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my life, had come crashing down in the span of a few days. Sophie and I had barely spoken since that night. She would leave for work in the morning, and I would stay in the guest room, pretending to sleep, pretending that everything wasn't falling apart. Every time I saw her, my chest tightened. I wanted to confront her, to ask her more questions, to demand answers. But every time I opened my mouth, the words wouldn't come. I wasn't sure if I was afraid of hearing the truth or if I was too exhausted to fight anymore. Sophie tried, of course. She tried to talk to me. She tried to be the person she once was, but it wasn't the same anymore. Her attempts felt hollow, like she was going through the motions, like we were both pretending to be something we were no longer. One evening, she came into the guest room and stood at the doorway, her eyes searching mine. Her face was still red from crying, but I could see the exhaustion in her posture, the way she held herself. It was as if she was waiting for me to give her permission to fix it. But I didn't know how to give that permission. I didn't know if I could. Oliver, she whispered, stepping into the room. Can we talk? I didn't answer right away. I wanted to say something. Anything. But the words felt stuck in my throat. I looked at her, and for a brief moment, I saw the woman I had married. The woman I thought I knew. But it was only a brief flicker. I'm listening, I finally said, my voice flat, distant. I wasn't angry, not anymore. I was just numb. She sat down on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped together in her lap, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. I know I've messed up, she began, her voice cracking slightly. I know I hurt you, and I can't take that back. But I'm begging you, Oliver, please just hear me out. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't know what to say. The last few days had been a blur of emotions. Anger, betrayal, confusion, and now, sitting here with her, I felt nothing. But that was the problem, wasn't it? I couldn't feel anything anymore. And I wasn't sure if that was worse than feeling the pain. I never wanted this, Sophie continued, her eyes welling up with tears. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't even know how it happened. It just did. Her voice was shaking now, and I could see the desperation in her eyes. But the more she spoke, the more it sounded like an excuse. I had heard these words before. I had heard them from other people who had betrayed me in different ways, from friends, from family, from colleagues. I didn't mean to. It was the most common defense people gave when they couldn't own up to the mess they had made. I'm sorry, she whispered again. But this time, the words didn't seem to carry any weight. It was as if she was just trying to fill the silence with something, anything, to avoid the truth. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I had feared, the moment I had dreaded. I knew the truth. I had known it for days. And yet, I wasn't sure if I was ready to face it completely. Sophie, I said, finally meeting her eyes. I don't know if I can do this anymore. Her face went pale, and I could see the panic set in. She stood up, her hands shaking as she reached out to me. What do you mean? I said slowly, I don't know if I can go back to what we had. I don't know if I can keep pretending like everything's fine. You've hurt me more than I ever thought possible. She took a step back, and I could see the tears start to fall, one by one, down her cheeks. She reached out for me again, but this time, I stepped back. I couldn't let her touch me. Not yet. Not after everything. Oliver, please, she begged, her voice barely above a whisper. I swear, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll fix this. I can't lose you. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that things could go back to the way they were, that this was just a bad chapter in our lives, a mistake we could work through. But deep down, I knew the truth. The trust was gone. And once trust was broken, once it was shattered, there was no putting it back together. I don't think you can fix this, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I saw the pain flash across her face, but it didn't move me the way it once would have. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just empty. I don't think I can fix this. She stood there, silent now, her hands pressed to her face as she tried to stifle her sobs. I could hear her breathing, shallow and uneven, but I didn't move. I didn't comfort her. I just stayed where I was, frozen in place, feeling the weight of the decision that was about to change everything. Maybe we need some time apart, I said quietly, my voice surprisingly calm. Maybe we both need to figure out who we are without each other. Maybe we need to figure out if we can even be together again. The silence in the room stretched on, thick and suffocating. Sophie didn't say anything. She didn't move. And in that silence, I knew the truth. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep pretending. For the first time in days, I stood up and walked past her, my steps heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. I didn't look back. I couldn't. As I stepped out of the guest room and into the hallway, the sound of Sophie's sobs followed me. But I didn't turn around. I had made my decision. And now, I had to live with it. Whether we would ever be able to rebuild or whether this was the end, I didn't know. But one thing was certain. I couldn't go back to the way things were. And neither could she. The days after the decision were the hardest ones I had ever faced. Sophie and I lived in the same apartment, but it felt like we were worlds apart. The silence between us was deafening, and yet, somehow, it gave me the space I needed to think, to breathe, to find myself again. In the weeks that followed, I realized something. This wasn't just about what Sophie had done to me. This was about me, too. I had lost myself in this relationship, had built my identity around being part of a we instead of remembering who I was as an individual. And in the silence, In the absence of the noise that had once defined our life together, I began to hear my own voice again. The first few days, I focused on me. I worked through my emotions, worked through the heartbreak, the anger, the confusion. I didn't expect to find answers right away, and I certainly didn't expect to feel okay anytime soon. But I started to. Slowly, I began to see things with a clearer mind. It wasn't about rushing to forgive or making decisions in haste. It was about taking the time to understand what I wanted, what I truly needed, and what I could give. Sophie had respected my space, and in doing so, she had given me the room to grow. She had stopped begging for forgiveness. She had stopped trying to convince me everything could go back to how it was. She didn't just apologize anymore. Instead, she focused on herself, on her own growth, on understanding what had led her to make the choices she had made. I could see the changes in her, the way she had started taking responsibility, not just for what she had done, but for how she had neglected herself and our relationship. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but it was real. And after weeks of silence, of trying to rebuild from the ground up, we finally had a conversation. It was late one evening when Sophie sat down beside me on the couch. Her eyes were tired, but there was something different in them, something I hadn't seen in months: vulnerability. "Oliver," she said quietly, her voice soft but steady, "I know I've hurt you. I can't undo that. But I need you to know that I've changed. I want to make things right, and I want to rebuild what we had, but I can't do it alone. I've learned so much these past weeks, about myself, about you, about us. But I know I have to earn back your trust." I turned toward her, taking in her words. My heart ached at how far we had fallen, but it also filled with a glimmer of hope. I had come to understand that life wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about never making mistakes. It was about how we moved forward, how we handled the aftermath, how we chose to heal and grow. I wasn't sure if everything could be fixed, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't ready to give up. Not on her. Not on us. "I can't promise that it will be easy," I said, my voice calm and sincere. "But I think we can try. We have to try. For both of us." Her eyes welled up with tears, but this time, they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of relief, of understanding. "I'm willing to do the work, Oliver," she whispered, reaching for my hand. "And I'll keep doing it every day, if you'll let me." I looked at her for a long moment, thinking about everything we had been through, all the pain, all the healing. And I realized something. Forgiveness wasn't just about saying the words. It was about choosing to move forward, choosing to believe in the possibility of change. And in that moment, I wanted to believe in us again. I wanted to give us a chance. We didn't have all the answers. We didn't have a clear path ahead of us. But we had each other, and that was a start. The next few months were filled with slow progress, but it was progress nonetheless. Sophie and I worked on rebuilding the trust that had been broken, piece by piece. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, of frustration, but there were also moments of joy, moments where we remembered why we had fallen in love in the first place. We went to therapy together, we communicated more openly, and we both learned how to be better versions of ourselves, not just for each other, but for ourselves. It wasn't a perfect ending, and it wasn't a fairy tale, but it was real. And sometimes, real life isn't about avoiding the storm. It's about weathering it together and coming out stronger on the other side. And as we stood there, hand in hand, looking out at the future, I realized that we had found something far more valuable than what we had before. We had found the strength to face the truth, to heal, and most importantly, to move forward together. It wasn't just the end of something broken. It was the beginning of something new, something we could build if we were willing to put in the work. And this time, I believed we were.